Hey guys, welcome back. So I guess this week is all about New Year's resolutions and goals because the previous video that I put out was all about how to crush your New Year's resolutions using 5 book recommendations that I gave you all. And today I wanted to talk about my personal bookish resolutions. This really won't be long because truthfully I don't have that many, but I wanted to share with you all to get your thoughts. As always, please let me know in the comments below if you have made any particular bookish resolutions or even just New Year's resolutions in general. If you do, what are they? What do you think of mine? Do we have the same ones? Just any comment that you'd love to leave, I'd love to chat about it. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So my first book resolution is to read at least one classic book this year. I confessed in a previous video that I had never read a Jane Austen book, which as a bibliophile I'm sure is shameful, cue the gasping, but I have not read a lot of classic books in general, and I really want to remedy that. Now, truthfully, I don't know if it's going to be Jane Austen, though obviously she is high on the list because, like I said, I've never read her before and I want to rectify that, but any classic in general. So I guess if I'd have to put a date on it, anything before the 60s, I'm not sure. To me, I categorize classics as anything on that book list that teachers used to give you in school. So they're not all, early 1900 books, but just books that have withstood the test of time. So my next bookish resolution is to read at least 25% of my current TBR. I have got books piled everywhere in various nooks and crannies in my house, and like most book lovers, I am constantly buying more books faster than I can consume them. And so to keep me from hoarding books, I need to at least get through 25. 30 would be great, but at least 25% of the books that I currently own, if only just to make space for new ones. So I guess if I think of it that way, then that will entice me to read the books that I already own. But if you're anything like me, you know how hard it is to just look at the books that you already have instead of focusing on the new and shiny ones. But hey, I'm a work in progress. So let's see if I can actually achieve it. Okay, so another resolution that I have is to read at least 2 books in another language. I actually had a video about reading books in another language or books to help you learn a second language a few videos back. I'll go ahead and link it. You guys know I never know where to point, but I need to practice what I preach. It has been a while since I've read a book in Spanish, which is the second language that I speak, and I want to make sure that I'm reading at least 1 to 2 books that are Spanish language just so that I don't fall out of practice. I watch Spanish shows all the time, but it's been quite a while, if I'm being honest, since I've read a book, and I actually just nabbed some Agatha Christie books in Spanish when I went to Mexico a few months ago with my husband. So it's not like I don't have any. Spanish books are actually all mixed in with my current TBR. So I guess if I were to read a Spanish book, then that would knock off 2 of my resolutions. 1 to read a book in another language, and then also to read a book currently on my TBR. So I guess that is incentive for me to go ahead and make sure that I do that. Oh boy. Okay, so this next one, I begrudgingly put on the list because I know that it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to do or not do, and that is to not buy books that I am not truly interested in just because I have FOMO. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably follow BookTube and Bookstagram, and I'm constantly getting recommendations or at least tempted to buy books based on how people describe them, and people who I follow who are really good at describing books automatically make me want to go out and buy the book. The problem with that is I'm not always necessarily interested in the book, and I know sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to be able to decipher whether or not I'm actually interested in it or if they're just doing a really good job describing it. And this is also kind of a gray area as well because I want to make sure that I'm reading books outside of my comfort zone, but at the same time I mean, you just sometimes know that you probably aren't actually going to read a book. You just want to buy it for the gram. And I want to work on doing that less because I hate to take up space on my precious bookcase with a book that I know I'm not actually going to get around to. But like I said, I'm probably going to have to figure that out on a case-by-case basis because everybody has well intentions when they are buying new books. And so I just want to be really judicious when I'm buying books that come from recommendations from other people, that I'm actually interested in reading them and they're not just going to collect dust on the shelf. Which brings me to my next resolution, which is essentially to be okay reading the kind of books that I like to read. Now, as a booktuber slash bookstagrammer, it's so easy to be persuaded to kind of dabble in different genres or to sometimes feel ashamed when you see that certain books or certain authors or genres are getting more hype and more play, whereas maybe the authors and books that I like to read may not be, but that doesn't mean that they aren't valid and that I shouldn't read them. So, perfect example, I would say about 90% of the books that I read are backlists, which if you look on BookTube and you look on Bookstagram, everything there it seems like is new, or at least it's the opposite, where 90% of the content that you're seeing is spotlighting new authors and new books, and that's great. But at the same time, I don't want to neglect the books that I like to read, which are backlists, which are series, which are, cozy mystery authors that aren't that popular, or romance authors who might not be getting as much play simply because they're not being spotlighted by the popular accounts that I follow. So in 2020, I am not going to be ashamed for the books that I like to read. I'm not going to be ashamed for reading a book that came out in 2010 instead of 2020. And I plan to keep it that way. So this next one is probably going to be the easiest for me because I've kind of started doing that already, and that is to participate in at least one readathon every quarter. And the reason that I want to do this is to basically stay in touch or stay involved with the book community. I find it's the easiest way to bring all of us together who have that shared interest depending on whatever the readathon subject is. For example, the one that I just did, 3 weeks ago, was the Kindle Unlimited one. And I came across so many interesting new accounts, both on Instagram and YouTube, just by following that tag. So going forward, I want to make sure that I participate in a few more throughout the year so that I am meeting new people, I'm seeing new accounts, I'm getting new books to read inside a genre or a subject matter that I'm still interested in. One of the ones that I'm actually participating in year-round I intend to participate in year-round is the In-Depth Readathon, where we go through the backlist of J.D. Robb's In-Depth series. I'm currently wrapping up the first book right now, and I'm loving it. And I've come across so many new accounts that I never knew existed before, simply because we're both participating in the readathon. So I want to be sure to keep that up going forward. Okay, so if you guys have been around for a while, you may have remembered a video that I put out a few months ago called Popular Authors That I've Never Read. Jane Austen was on that list. But one of my goals for the year is to read a book by at least one of the authors that I mentioned on the list. Now, if I choose Jane Austen, then that would actually satisfy two of my goals, which is reading her, an author I've never done before, as well as reading a classic. But there were authors on that list as well who don't necessarily fall into the classics genre. For example, I think Stephen King was on it, Cassandra Clare. So yeah, I want to check one of their books out just because I want to expand my horizon. I've heard so many good things about each of the authors that I listed that I want to see what the hype is about myself. So at the moment, I think I'm actually leaning towards Stephen King. I actually just downloaded Pet Sematary on my Audible account a couple of weeks ago. I'm just trying to find the perfect time to fit it in. But if you guys have seen that video or you have a recommendation that you'd love to give, please let me know because, for example, Stephen King has such a heavy backlist, it can be intimidating to know where to start. So any tips that you guys have, I would love to know them. Okay, so my last resolution that I have, I was debating whether or not to make it a resolution because I've never been one to have a serious goal about how many books that I read within a year, simply because I've always been a reader and I don't want to necessarily box myself in by making sure that I hit a certain book count for the year. But I think this year I'm gonna switch it up, feeling inspired, feeling ambitious, and so I'm gonna go ahead and publicly put out there that this year I want to make it a goal to read 100 books. I think I can do it. If anything, that will help me kind of focus on making sure that reading is a priority in my life. Again, I've always loved to read, but I can get a little caught up with binging TV at night or the not so occasional Netflix marathons, and I know that I would probably enjoy reading a book more. So if anything, it will help me develop a better habit in those little pockets of time where I'm just mindlessly flipping the channel. So last year I read 79 books, I think. And that was actually easily achieved by me only reading a whole lot towards the middle of the year. The beginning of the year was just a little here or there. But since we're in January, since we're in the beginning of the year, I think now that I have made that a goal, it's totally feasible for me to do. So fingers crossed that I can actually do it. I'm going to be working diligently to do that. So I guess we'll see. Follow back up in 12 months to see if I actually completed it. Okay, so there you have it. I think I listed off 8 resolutions. Like I said, not too many. I think that they are achievable, some more than others, but you know, hey, what's a goal if it's not at least a little bit challenging to do? So like I said before, please let me know if you have your own bookish resolutions or bookish goals. I'd love to discuss and talk about them in the comments. Otherwise, please like and subscribe this video if you like it, if you like any of my other similar content. And until next time, guys, bye!